Chapter 18 Rylan's Homecoming. Attention, Binary Basin Habitat Station. This is the Coalition Warship Marathon. Please come in. Marathon, this is Binary Basin Colonial Administration. Pleased to hear your voice. The refugees from Quantum Crossing said you were carrying survivors of the starship Adimash. Affirmative, Binary Basin. We have Captain Quinn, his crew, and his passengers. Understood, Marathon. You have our thanks. Please transport Quinn and his passengers to Acrux 4A. You are also welcome to stay on the moon if you require shelter from the storm. Thank you, Binary Basin. Please be advised, we are being followed by a flotilla of cloaked warships from the Astral Fellowship. You should have your defenses up when we arrive. Marathon out. Ino sat in the captain's chair, listening intently to the conversation between comms officer Indungane and the local Cevanti government. Sota noticed that Ino was only partly paying attention. Is something wrong? Sota asked. I've got a feeling, or a suspicion, Ino replied. How are the Desticans able to follow us so far? We've had at least partial cloaking capability for about a month now. They should be struggling to track us. We aren't fully visible to sensors. Maybe they found a way to get around our cloaking field, Sota suggested. Maybe, Ino said. Then she turned to face the electronic warfare station, only to see that an unfamiliar junior officer was operating it. Where's Petty Officer Mancini? Remember when he backtalked to you about unshackling Axiom? I had him confined to quarters after that, Sota answered. I wanted to put him in the brig, but we've got about 100 Marauder prisoners down there right now, and I didn't want him to mingle with them. Ino shook her head. Get Mancini up here. I need to pick his brain. Petty Officer Mancini arrived on the bridge a few minutes later. His rumpled uniform and rough-looking stubble suggested he had let himself go over the past few days. Captain, is there an emergency? I was called up here in a hurry. Electronic warfare question for you, Ino said. How hard would it be to track another vessel through space while you were using a cloaking device? Mancini raised an eyebrow. Normally, it's very difficult, he replied. Cloaking generators require lots of power. Typically, in a coalition ship, most of the EW systems are deactivated while cloaking systems are active. For instance, the gravitic sensors are turned off. Those are our long-range eyes. Don't worry, Captain. We're not flying totally blind. The short-range passive sensors are always on. They're tied to our anti-radiation weapons platform. But as for tracking ships over interplanetary distances and doing so while cloaked, that's a very tall order. You'd only have access to the most rudimentary of sensor systems. Petty Officer Mancini noticed the young man working the EW station and quickly started to critique his work. Ino, meanwhile, turned to Sota. Those Destican ships have been following us the whole time, right? And they aren't using cloaking devices? Yes to both, Sota replied. They've been using cloaks just as often as they've been visible to us. Those ships are so small, Ino said. Frigate class, right? They'd have to take all of their sensors offline while they're cloaked. How have they been able to track us across multiple star systems? Petty Officer Mancini looked up from the EW station. Well, the Desticans have more than conventional sensors at their disposal, he said. Don't forget the stories about their telepaths. Those mind readers can break into people's thoughts from orbit. The Coalition Science Directorate has determined that telepathy is impossible, Ino said in a robotic tone of voice, without really thinking about it. Let's find an explanation that actually makes sense. Comms Officer Indungane interrupted. Captain, Binary Basin is sending us an encrypted message. They say it is for your eyes only. Ino decided to take the encrypted message in her ready room. Once she sealed the door, Ino reached across her desk and tapped the computer screen. A voice began to speak in the Cevanti language. Axiom translated it into English. Stand by for a message from Drex Aster, Oracle of the Augmented Cevanti Administration. Ino felt her heart skip a beat. The Oracle was supposed to be the head of government for the Cevanti people. Why was he sending her a message directly? A pre-recorded video appeared on the computer screen, depicting a green and brown office setting. A Cevanti man sat down behind the central desk. This man was a full cyborg. His body glittered with numerous cybernetic enhancements. His eyes emitted the dim glow of LED light. Captain Esperanta of the Coalition, I am Drex Aster of the Augmented Cevanti Administration. I understand that you have offered shelter to both Rylan Quinn, an officer of our military, and to his passenger, Astro Creator Azarin. For this you have the profound gratitude of myself and my people. At this moment, we are attempting to shelter from the Nexus storm on the Sanctuary Moon in this system. In addition, our sensors show that you are preparing to launch Azarin's vivarium from your hangar bay. I do not know what Azarin has told you about her research, but Ino was dreading the worst-case scenario, that Aster would tell her to stop Azarin's plan to terraform the Sanctuary Moon. Oracle Aster took a deep breath and pressed on. You must do exactly as Azarin says. Ino was so shocked she gasped aloud, almost missing what the Oracle said next. My people have been following Azarin's research with great interest, Aster said. We have seen the potential in her data. If given the opportunity, Azarin will do great good for the galaxy. When I dispatched Captain Quinn on his mission to escort Azarin to safety, I told him to defend Azarin's life at all costs. He, his ship, and his crew were considered expendable so long as Azarin was safeguarded from harm. I know I cannot ask you to make the same sacrifice, but I implore you to place your trust in Azarin, if not your faith, as we have done. Ino went to find Rylan as soon as she was able to. She had not gotten very far off the bridge when he came looking for her. They crossed paths in a corridor outside of the new CIC. I just got a message from the Oracle, they said simultaneously. The pair paused, and Ino saw the first genuine smile cross Rylan's face outside of their late-night dates in the virtual combat simulator. You as well? Rylan asked. In relation to the Astro Creator? Yes, Ino replied. You were right when you told me how important she is to your people. Rylan nodded. Azarin is in the hangar now, preparing her terraforming platform, he said. I would ask your permission to leave the ship. Leave? Ino asked, confused. Azarin will need an escort. Bodyguards, Rylan said. She is ultimately my responsibility, so I should take point. And since the both of you are my passengers, I'm responsible for you too, Ino said. Let's go. Follow me. Ino and Rylan made their way to the armory together. Didn't you say that you and the Oracle are political allies or something like that? Ino asked, racking her brains for an old memory. In a sense, Rylan replied. I spoke in support of Aster during the last consensus. What we would call a democratic election. Right, Ino said. So Aster wouldn't trust anyone else with Azarin's security, would he? Probably not, Rylan said. The Oracle does not take half measures. Right, Ino said. I want to send some of my people with you. Have you met our Marine detachment? Ino and Rylan arrived at the armory. Elodie of Liechtenstein and her team of Space Marines were there, doing some midday training. Looking through a glass window, Ino and Rylan could see an indoor shooting range, where Elodie and her Marines were talking about their weapons. Reza Agdashlu stepped up to the firing line. This is a CAR modular bullpup assault rifle. It was made for the Chinese army, but it's also used by former CSAT countries like Iran and Venezuela, he said. It's chambered for 6.5mm caseless ammunition, has a fire rate of 800 rounds per minute, and a muzzle velocity of 900 meters per second. "Can it punch through nanocomposite armor?" asked one of the Marines. "I've asked Axiom to rig something up for us," Reza said. Ashok Raval rolled his eyes at the mention of Axiom, but held his tongue as a door swung open at the far end of the shooting range. A metal target, affixed to a monorail on the floor, rolled onto the shooting range. It was shaped vaguely like a Destican soldier, complete with curved horns, and wore a full-body suit of power armor. Rylan and Ino watched as Lance Corporal Agdashlu loaded his weapon and opened fire. The sound of the assault rifle echoed through the chamber. The target downrange twitched as it was struck. Agdashlu kept shooting until a nanocomposite chest plate broke free and fell off the simulated enemy soldier. Then he cleared the rifle and set it down. Elodie folded her arms. "I don't know. It's going to take a lot more than a smooth demonstration to make me give up on Old Reliable here," Elodie said, tapping her own personal weapon, a German-manufactured assault rifle. "Do you have a training program ready so we can all try it out?" "Yes, Gunny Sarge," said Agdashlu. "I've got a set of targets here in the shooting range, and I've also cooked up a scenario for all of us to play out in the virtual combat simulator." Ino decided this was her cue and knocked on the window. The Marines looked around and spotted her. Several of the lower-ranking Marines snapped to the position of attention, while Elodie waved at Ino and said, "The talk button is on the left side." Ino held the switch down and spoke through the glass. "I'm gathering a detail of soldiers for a bodyguard team," Ino said. At once, 4 out of 6 Marines raised their hands. Ashok Raval, Jaiho Yuhan, Takahito Savea, and Reza Agdashlu. "Good," Ino said. "You'll be protecting Azarin's science ship, the Vivarium, and for the duration of the mission, you'll be taking orders from Captain Quinn here." She gestured at Rylan. Ashok lowered his hand, but the other 3 Marines made their weapons safe and stepped off the firing range. As the marathon drew near the sanctuary moon, a flotilla of Cevanti ships came out to meet her. "We detect 3 warships," Prisbin called up to the bridge from the CIC. "Best I can tell, those 3 corvettes constitute the entire Cevanti military presence in the system." "And there's 6 Destican frigates behind us," Ino muttered. "It's still a mismatch if it comes to a fight." "All right, call the air boss. Let the Cevanti put down on runway 2. But this proved to be easier said than done. Outside, the cosmic storm was intensifying. Gravitational forces were buffeting 2 of the corvettes badly. They struggled to line up with the runway and had to abort their landing attempts multiple times. Finally, after several tense minutes, 2 of the Allied ships managed to land. The 3rd corvette made a mistake on its final approach and crashed into a parked starfighter. "Fire on runway 2! All crew to their action stations!" Air Boss Ty called over the intercom. Ino and Rylan arrived in the hangar at the same time as the damage control teams. A billowing inferno threatened to fill the hangar with smoke. Human and Cevanti firefighters worked together to deploy suppression systems, while a contingent of androids ran headlong into the blaze, looking for survivors. "Watch yourself, Captain," Air Boss Ty said as she ran past. "There's a fuel spill. That's what's feeding the fire." One of the newly arrived Cevanti commanders took charge, evacuating her people from the area. "Out of the hangar!" a female Cevanti called out to her charges. "Everyone out, and make way for the firefighters!" "I have to find Azarin," Rylan said. "The Vivarium is in here." Ino knew that an out-of-control fire was the quickest way to destroy a starship. She made a decision on the spot and yelled out to the air boss. "Evacuate the hangar! We're gonna go full suppression!" "Yes, Captain," Ty yelled back. "Axiom, start the countdown to suppression!" Ino called out. Axiom's voice sounded over the din, amplified by the intercom system. Fire suppression protocols activated on Hangar 2. Evacuate Hangar 2 immediately. Fire suppression will begin in 2 minutes. I've got her! Rylan's voice sounded. Rylan emerged from the smoke, carrying Azarin. A group of androids was following him, each one carrying an injured or unconscious crew member. Ino held an airlock door open and allowed them to pass through. She was the last person to leave Hangar 2. Axiom, we're out! Ino called to the intercom as soon as the airlock was sealed behind her. Hangar 2, fire suppression underway, Axiom replied. Ino felt a shudder run through the vessel as all of the atmosphere in Hangar 2 was suddenly vented to space. Robbed of the oxygen it needed to burn, the fire was quickly extinguished. Fire suppressed, Axiom reported. Hangar 2 is repressurizing. Damage report, Ino said, looking through the glass window in the airlock door. 1 Cevanti corvette, the Hollow Hero, has been destroyed. The 2 remaining corvettes, Zephyr Nova and Wraithwhite, have survived with minimal damage. We have lost 29 starfighters, including all of the Su-77 frames that made up Silent Hunter Squadron. Ino put her head in her hands. Shit, she breathed. We needed those fighters. It was a subdued homecoming for Rylan and his crew. 3 Cevanti officers greeted him in the all-ranks club, 2 men and a woman. Soren Gale, Riddle Veer, and Echo Cade spoke to Rylan in hushed voices as they brought him up to speed on the situation. There's an overcrowding crisis on the Sanctuary Moon, said Echo, the lone female officer. We don't know how, but word got out of this place being safe. Millions of people have been arriving via civilian vessels. We think the moon's population has grown to at least 8 million now, Soren explained. Mostly Cevanti, but there are now sizable populations of humans, Desticans, Cyandites, Kodronites, and Lozavatans. Mammalians, toxoids, lithoids, plantoids, and necroids. What a mix, Rylan groaned. Then he startled. Wait, did you say there are Destican civilians on the Sanctuary Moon? About 600,000 of them now, said Riddle. They started crossing the border right after that supernova shockwave went through. Nearly all of them are escaped slaves. They are aliens who were forcibly transformed into Desticans by the Chamber of Elevation before being put to work. How are so many getting into our space? What about Destican security forces? It looks like Decronia was hit harder by this disaster than we were, Riddle said. Their society appears to have totally collapsed. Of the 600,000 Destican refugees, only about 1% of them are native Desticans. The rest are transformed alien captives. Even so, the situation on the moon is tense, Soren concluded. The storm shelters we built on the surface only have space for about 2 million people, certainly not 8. There are whole cities springing up on the surface, built from dismantled starships. People are desperate. They know we're on the edge of the Nexus storm, and that the Sanctuary Moon is their last hope. But the moon's magnetic field will only protect them if they are under the additional shielding provided by our shelter systems, Echo added. The people outside our shields are going to die. Rylan clenched his fists and stood up. I will speak to Azarin. Try to get her to accelerate her plan before the storm arrives. Plan? What plan? All 3 Cevanti officers said. Azarin might have a way to strengthen the moon's natural defenses against the Nexus storm, Rylan said. The human captain is in on it. As soon as the damage from the hangar fire is repaired, we will resume our work. As Rylan turned to leave, he saw something out of the corner of his eye. For the shortest, most infinitesimal moment, Rylan could have sworn that he saw a Destican man standing at the far side of the All Ranks Club, watching him with a curious expression.
Destiny is hard to meet. He'll hunt you down somewhere along the way. Don't you see we're meant to be the prodigies that came to show the way? 'Cause I don't wanna rule the world alone. None of us can make it on our own. I'm screaming but I cannot hear a sound. The suffocation slowly